First of all, where's Jacob Wolf in my game, CSGO? It's one of the biggest games in the entire world, right? I'm not going to say I know the number of stories he's made, but I would be shocked if he's done 10 stories in CSGO. And if he's done 10, they weren't the blockbuster ones, mate. Some of them were small ones. I even saw he did one about Flashpoint. I actually know part of the information was incorrect. Then I'll just say this. The reason why that's interesting to me is because the great journalists, I don't even consider myself one in the terms of investigative journalism, because what I do is I do a little bit of what the investigative journalist does, but I essentially just turn around and I use it to inform my op-eds, my opinion pieces. Someone like Richard obviously absolutely then has to nail every detail down. He can't just go, well, this is what I'm thinking or what I've heard. If he reports it, there's a reason why he has an insane record. Like, people have very rarely ever shown evidence that he was wrong, which means he doesn't go first on every story. Sometimes stories never come out, believe it or not. There's amazing stories that, couldn't get it over the line the last 5%. One of the stories I've heard, which is kind of an industry legend at this point in time about Jacob Wolf, is when you look at the massive orgs, particularly in League of Legends, that he always has the fucking story for. He always has the massive player that's joining. Or bizarrely, he knows that, in a way that might, fuck with the player, that this player's leaving. The behind the scenes in the industry, the logic goes, people just say, well, of course, he's in the pocket of X, Y, and Z owner, or he has a relationship with X, Y, and Z owner, so certain stories maybe don't get published, certain stories do get published, maybe the way they're framed gets published that way. Again, I'm not actually claiming on that one. You'll notice I was very clever with the way I phrased that there. I'm not claiming that's a fact. I'm not claiming it's something I know for a certainty. But you know what? We're all just saying things we think about the industry, right, Jacob? It's fun. It's fun to do that, isn't it? So round two, maybe? Nah, I don't. Listen, that's not even all the nukes in the silo, mate. So I just.
No. I think, by the way, this is, again, for scoring in a nutshell, right? For scoring, sure. And, no one has to co-sign this. In my opinion, she is a disgusting human being. I think she's absolute scum of the earth. But she will never, no matter how many other individuals would want to say that or agree with that or whatever, generally speaking, unless, mountains move, she will never be considered that, because she is perceived to be playing for the correct team. And she is supporting, even though her arguments are trash and not consistent, and actually, if you break them down, don't even help her own cause. Because her arguments are, quote unquote, for the correct team, she is never anything other than a victim, and she is on the correct side. And if you attack her, you are an oppressor, and she is the oppressed. Yeah,
basically, if people don't know, if people don't know, I've basically tried my hardest to fucking find a way mentally to frame it that because I knew her in the past when I thought she was a very upstanding person, actually, and a very diligent individual, blah blah blah, etc etc etc. Before she got radicalized by politics, basically, I always tried to find a way to do what you'd like to do, which is let's separate the person from their work, and then if the work's good, we'll just big that up, because obviously that used to be the naive dream of what the esports utopia would be, which would be everyone leave all the other shit at the door, just do some good work. Don't be a fucking arsehole. Don't ever do anything wrong. And then, we can all argue in private groups about that. Or you can just use your Twitter for that if you really want, I literally, this is an even worse one. An agent who was in one of these calls, literally within one call, twice shilled for clients of his to win the award. And even when he said a disclaimer, it is my client, but I think you did a great job. I was like, why are you speaking then? You have a literal financial interest in him winning this fucking award. It could help you and your career and your bottom line. This is mental. So in that scenario, by the way, you don't imagine I just sit there meekly, no, I don't like the way this is going. I just piped up and said, what the fuck are you talking about? I said, don't do that ever again in this awards. Don't ever speak about a client of yours. We don't want to hear you shill them, mate. Let other people talk in that scenario. And you know what? This is one of the moments that made me realise I can't be part of this awards, is there was just an awkward silence. 0 people spoke up and agreed with me. And you could get that feeling actually from people by the fact they said nothing, that it was more like they were like, oh, he's made a scene. This is awkward. Why can't we all just get along? Because you're fucking ruining the premise of the awards. You're a shill. You're a piece of shit. I thought, why am I even here? I don't want to be in some mainstream award show where your studio can just buy you the award and then people get to think it was real and you were the best. I'm not in for that. I'm completely out on that note. It says, with much respect and an open heart, I share with you today that our beloved Kyle Danny Sakamaki will not be competing at this weekend's LCS Summer Split Finals in Chicago. It takes a great deal of courage and self-awareness to recognise when the right time is to step away from something you've worked so hard at achieving. Yeah, it's almost like you shouldn't be coerced in that decision, isn't it? Especially when you care so deeply for this organisation and your teammates in order to focus on your mental health. Now, imagine if they had have coerced this guy and they are even putting in the programme in there, especially when you care, you'd want to play, wouldn't you? You care so deeply about Evil Geniuses and especially your teammates, don't you? You wouldn't want to let them down. But now that you qualify for Worlds, it's key that no nows when you could say, you know what I mean? Like, even though this phrase just seems so fucking gross when you hear some of the things I've heard. Kyle has played an integral part in EG's success this year in LCS, and there are not enough words to express his undisputable value to this team and organisation. We at Evil Geniuses are more than just an organisation. Oh, are you ready? We're a family. How fucking dare you? Just wait till you find out more about the EG org in this video on that. What a family they're like, by the way. We battle together, win together, lose together, and support each other through every situation. Coerce each other together, conceal information from each other together, ignore warnings together, make fucked up decisions that are cynical about people's lives and use them as commodities together. And we're kind of like a family. What? Yo, technically you are. You're just, in this scenario, really fucked up family who don't actually seem to love the children in the family and just use them cynically and even replace them and use them as trade. Oh, fucking hell. Since if I reference Forgiven, I was very honest about him. He's a friend of mine, you know. If I talk about a player like Reckless, I've heard from teammates, even coaches, he's tricky to work with. Like, he's not a person, it's not how a lot of his fans might see him on the face value, which is, I've always said, he's basically the most perfect face European League legends could ever have. He's the clean-cut Swedish guy with the blonde hair, blue eyes. He seems like he has a lovely attitude. He's quiet, so people are kind of like, they vibe with him. He practices, his consistency's been incredible, like, team player. There's so many things to go that are positive, but I don't want to paint a one-sided picture, and I don't want people to pretend he was a saint, you know. So give me some thoughts. Was it tricky with the tactics you had to use to work with Reckless and to get him on side with certain things or certain ideas? I mean, people might know even before your time, there's times where maybe he didn't want players who were teammates, or maybe he wanted to bench himself. This happened during this year, obviously. So can I have some thoughts on some of the challenges of working with Reckless, and how do you do it in the end?
At times it was difficult. I don't think when it comes to in-game related stuff it was difficult. I think Reckless was the kind of guy where if he had his ups and downs, and when he was up, he could lift the entire team with him, and he would be just about the perfect teammate you could ask for. But when he had his downs, it could get very ugly as well. So one of the things that happened is I signed on for Fnatic, and the first thing I hear is, hey, we have a situation. Hylissang and Reckless are boot camping in Korea, and something happened. We don't know what, but they're not on speaking terms anymore. But rest assured, if it doesn't work out, we have Jesse still signed. So if you need to make a change, we can do that.
I get the vibe that's what it's like to play with Reckless from some of the stories I've heard. Feels like he won't tell you he wants all the resources. So it reminds me of fucking Nico, funnily enough, also a G2 signing. But it's like he wants all the control, all the influence and power and everything his way, otherwise it's going to be hell to pay. But he also doesn't want to ask that because he doesn't want to be seen to be a diva and a guy who asks for that and demands things and is an unreasonable teammate. Even though, by the way, wanting that and not asking for it makes you even more of a diva and annoying and difficult to deal with and hard to know what the fuck you want. And if we give it to you and it works, why didn't you tell us at the beginning? So you can see how infuriating that could be. I just want to play League of Legends if I'm Yankos. If I'm Caps, I just want to frag out in mid lane, get all the kills, just carry a bunch of team fights. Can you just do your bloody job as the ADC? Like, that Perks guy wasn't complaining like this. Or if he was, it was to give me a kick up the arse to actually get my shit together and we would go and win the split every time. So you think about this. If you don't do that for Reckless, you're the bad guy. Who the bloody hell wants to be put in that situation? So I would say this. The most telling thing for me is that Caps and Yankos didn't want to play with this guy, apparently. Now, Yankos' persona might be misleading because he seems like just such a fun, silly guy on stream. This guy ain't a bullshitter. I'm telling you that right now. There's a reason why this guy has effectively had Forgiven and Reckless booted out of his teams when they were the best ADCs in the league / the West. Because if you fuck around and you have the wrong attitude and you aren't serious or you're causing problems for Yankos, yeah, he's not a coward. He'll say, yeah, I don't like this shit. I'll tell someone else, all the other players, yeah, let's get fucking rid of this guy. This guy is a GOAT candidate in his own right. He ain't just there to play with you and then lose and go, oh, well, at least I got to play with the great Reckless. Fuck you. You should want to play with me and win championships, mate. I've been an MVP a bunch. I've been to the finals of Worlds. I've won an LEC championship. Then let's have a look at the influence and the impact he did have on his team as a player, right? Because Bjergsen is so overrated in that regard. How are you going to simultaneously tell me that he was the guy where it's like, it's not his fault and he was great and he was the only part that was good in the team, but it's all the rest of them in the team that have to blame. And he was really good and he definitely knows how to shot call, but all these players just didn't listen and didn't do it, and Team TSM never has a good macro. So when I say his influence and impact, he's overrated. I mean, in terms of it being effective, I think he had enormous impact and influence over the team. It just wasn't good. good. That's the problem. You think of the impact people like High, Afro Moo, Yellow Star, Mithy, Perks, go through the fucking list. Look what they do for their teams, right? Think about this. If you want to tell me that Bjergsen is like, oh, he doesn't have any agency over his team. No, think about this. What player in the history of Western League of Legends, maybe in all of League of Legends ever, had more influence and agency over his team than Bjergsen in TSM? He had the owner's ear for over half a decade. He got players that he wanted in the team at his request, like fucking Mike Young, like some of those people that came from Europe that played certain bot lanes. Think Doublelift asked to be replaced, did he fuck? So he brings in these people, they fail on his team and sometimes not even elsewhere, but that's never on him. That's never him just having a fucked up perception of the game or how to use his teammates or not being able to influence them positively. How does this guy skate by every single time? Mithy, I think, is one of the greatest ever at that. It's one of the reasons why he was one of the only players I was almost certain would become a very good coach, because he coached all of his ADCs up that played in his lane, made them all greater players, some of the best in Europe. He coached up Perks in G2, a team that was like decent in that first split, but the one that learned how to win was under Mithy, and they learned Mithy-style League of Legends. You go ask Perks about himself. He's the guy where, when he was on TSM with Mike Young, he was having a coach coach Mike Young as to how jungle is fucking played. By the way, the same Mike Young that Bjergsen not only wanted, but wanted ahead of Xmithy. By the way, the same Xmithy went and won a whole bunch of championships right after that, back to back, and then got to the MSI final. How's Bjergsen's fucking eye test for you boys? How's his understanding of the game? He thinks some dumbass rookie like Mike Young, who played in P1, a complete joke team, who's basically playing solo queue style, like, he's the jungler I want like 5 or 6 years into my career. There's your fucking coach. There's the guy that you wanted to be leading TSM.
Look at him as we looked at him as an in-game leader, looked at him as an AWPer. Now let's look at him as a star player, shall we? So, since summer 2015... Fallen has played with Fer and coldzera. Now, the reason why that's significant is people forget. Remember, coldzera and Fer were already there in the team before they got FNX and Taco in November of that year. They had a few months where they already had Fer and coldzera. If these are all like all-time great players, why wasn't Fallen just got banging off and going ham that year? If I've already got coldzera, who's early in his career but still a good player, Fer was the previous star, pretty good fragger. These are already international level players. If Fallen's this amazing player, as a star player talent, they should have already had 3 stars. They should have already been winning best of 3s. They should have already been having massive placings, but they weren't. Their best results were like top 8 at a major, win the odd map. They finally won 1 best of 3 over like Titan or someone at that, it was a CEVO, I think it was CEVO Season 8 or something. They weren't in any position where they had these stars. He wasn't playing like a star player back then. It's weird that, isn't he? What, did he just suddenly, at age what? I mean, I'd have to look it up. He must have been like 26 or 27 already. He just magically became a star player the next year, did he? And totally godlike. Wasn't anything to do with having talent in his teams. You come to 2016, he's a star, but largely off impact. The numbers aren't nutty. These aren't crazy stats. There's other players elsewhere you'd consider way worse as star players who have much better numbers. Then you come in 2017, coldzera and Fer are clearly better players as stars, yet he gets considered, Fallen, gets considered a star talent and ranked above people like Config, Adren, Kenny S, Forrest. Now, yeah, Nip weren't a great team, but Forrest was a fucking star player in that team, was putting up numbers in that team, and was playing a carry role. Fallen wasn't doing that in his team. The number of games I saw last year, 2017, that Fallen, his team would win a map where he had like 13 or 14 kills and they would win the map. Try taking guys like Config, Simple, Guardian, I guess Guardian's the least unfair to do it with because he's got so many other stars on his team. Try taking these players and giving them 13 kills in a game and see how many maps they win. It's going to be, in some cases, none. In some cases, very few. And maybe someone like Guardian's done it a few times because he now has so much talent around him. Just doesn't happen. Doesn't add up that this guy's a star player. Now you go and you look at him as a star player, right? I'll just go ahead and say it. He's not one. He was in 2016, but that was a very different era, and some of that was predicated on team style and what the makeups of the different squads in the world were then. In 2017 and on, he's just not a star player. He's a third star, the hybrid role. Could put him in that if you want. Even then, you have to take into account the intangibles. Oh, is he clutch factor, big game player? I will say, listen, occupying an in-game leader role and being a good fragger will give you a very unique team dynamic, and that's great. And that's why they can plug some of these pieces in and go back to being an amazing team. It means you can load up with more team player oriented players because you can frag a bit yourself. It means you can go the other way. You can also do something, since you're the in-game leader, you can be somebody who's doing a bit of the open, bit of the in-game leading, and now you can have more skill-heavy players, like when they had Phelps in the lineup. So when you consider players, you've got to define your metrics before looking at the player, then apply it to the player, and apply it to every player equally. Don't apply it to one player and say, all these intangibles and on the other guy. Well, you have all these skilled players, Carrigan, so if you don't win, you can't be that good an in-game leader. Which is it? I mean, who gets the qualities? Who gets what the credit and for what?
They say no man is an island. We all need people who've got our back. And supporting me and the content on my channel are the following people: Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, The Concept, Animosity, Banediesel, Ben Glass, Jasun, Jensen Goh, Tosh, Toucan, and you know it. Always a special thanks goes up to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Do you want to ask a question for my video AMA? Do you want to take part in one of those lengthy discussions where I talk about whatever topics are on your mind? Do you want teasers, find out who the upcoming guests are, or maybe even to suggest a guest or a topic for my content? If any of those perks or others catch your fancy, well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skrilluminati today, where? In the Patreon link in the description box below.